The Elder Scrolls Online, one of the most talked about MMOs in the past half a decade, estimated earlier this year to have over 3 million accounts with roughly 500,000 active players across its 3 platforms and 6 servers. The game is known for its immersive exploration experience, its unique ways of questing and experience gaining, and its out-of-the-box approach to character development that allows its players to make their own choices in terms of weapons, skills, and armor usage, no matter what class or race they play. But we're not here to talk about all that today. We are here to talk about war, bloodshed, and inconsistent performance. This is the current state of the Elder Scrolls Online's PvP. The Elder Scrolls Online presents 4 different formats of PvP or player versus player activities. Dueling, a one-on-one fight to death between 2 individual players. Battlegrounds, a matchmaking-based arena where 3 teams of up to 4 players in size compete against one another by completing objectives such as capturing flags, relics, and TDM. Imperial City, a small zone where players can fight one another, as well as partake in some PvE quests involving the fight against the Daedra who have conquered the city. And the biggest of all, Cyrodiil, a massive zone, the biggest zone in the entire game, where the 3 factions fight one another endlessly while attempting to take over keeps, castles, and towns to gain control over land. Cyrodiil is the main format of PvP in the Elder Scrolls Online, where you, the player, can choose to team up with other members of your faction and partake in massive sieges and battles, take over small towns and towers with your guilds or friends, or just run off on your own looking for a fight to pick behind enemy lines. There are always battles to join, and there are always objectives to fight over, such as Daedric artifacts, Elder Scrolls, and so on. You can become the champion of your faction and make your attempt at becoming the Emperor of Cyrodiil, or simply hang out with your friends while slaying enemy players. The options are limitless. There are some limiting factors, however. So, is the Elder Scrolls Online's PvP worthy of your time and money? Perhaps. Let's talk about it. The Elder Scrolls Online's PvP offers several very appealing concepts. Let's start by talking about the combat system. ESO's combat system is one of the best I've ever come across in any MMO I've played. In fact, it is what made me turn to PvP in the first place, being a PvX player in previous MMOs I've played. The system is super dynamic and reinforces skill-based combat. While you can cast your skills normally like in most other MMOs, you can do so much more if you're a capable player. You can block attacks to reduce the damage you take or dodge them to avoid all damage for a moment. However, you can't keep blocking or dodging endlessly, so you must time your moves right. Your positioning is super relevant. You can avoid taking damage by staying out of another player's ability range if you know what abilities they use, and you can use objects around you to break line of sight from your enemy to prevent them from casting spells against you altogether. In addition, some level of animation cancelling exists in the game, which allows you to weave attacks better and faster if you master it, making experienced players have a slight advantage over inexperienced ones, which encourages you to learn the ins and outs of the combat system to dominate any fight you partake in. It is worth mentioning here that ZeniMax Online Studios, the developers of the game, have recently made some extreme attempts at decreasing the skill gap the combat system creates, so that less experienced players can have an easier time fighting against more experienced ones. This very controversial move has resulted in a lot of criticism towards them from the long-term endgame player base, but let's leave that discussion aside, at least for now. While the dynamic combat system of the game is certainly one of its most unique and attractive features, there are some elements of the game and its PvP environment that take away from the benefits of the skill-based combat. One of those are the recurring proc sets metas. Proc sets are item sets you can equip your character with that activate or proc a surge of damage to an enemy or multiple enemies whenever a condition is met. The conditions for these sets are mostly easy to meet, such as casting a specific type of ability or simply taking damage, while the effects of these sets tend to be very powerful. This results in a very hostile environment to play in, where any player in a PvP zone, be it an experienced player or a completely new one, could deal excessive amounts of damage simply by using the right sets, without putting any real effort into the fight. Such sets are continuously being added to the game and tend to take many months to have their strength reduced to normal levels. The game is currently in its third cycle of a proc meta thanks to the introduction of some extremely problematic sets, which makes it seem as if the development of the game has not made any conclusions from the previous times that the game had such issues. Another historic problem players must face in The Elder Scrolls Online's PvP is the lack of balance between classes. ESO's approach to classes is very unlike that of most modern MMOs and is quite reminiscent of classic World of Warcraft. Classes in the game don't all have similar offensive and defensive skills, but have completely different methods of dealing damage, healing themselves and others, providing utility to their group members, etc., etc. While this approach supports the play-as-you-like feeling the game is successfully trying to emit, it also creates difficult situations in many formats of PvP, where smaller groups or individuals feel very ineffective when fighting against specific classes that seem to have the edge over them in multiple fields, such as dealing large amounts of damage as well as being able to heal themselves and stay alive for a longer amount of time. Due to the constant balance changes that tend to reshape the PvP scene of the game drastically every few months, the top classes of the game tend to change from time to time, and very few classes are regularly close to the top of the food chain. And while that gives every player some hope that their class could suddenly spike to the top with a new patch of balance changes, many players constantly feel frustrated having to change the class they play or simply know they cannot beat some opponents while playing an underpowered class. A great way to avoid such balance issues in ESO is to play in a group rather than alone. Groups of players in PvP can range from 1 or 2 players teams in Battlegrounds or Cyrodiil to full 12-man raids in open world PvP, and even beyond. Some guilds or factions stack multiple raids together on top of one another to create massive armies that can take down enemy groups and castles alike. One of the most enjoyable things in The Elder Scrolls Online's PvP is your ability to choose your own playstyle. You can certainly play on your own and pick your own fights, or you can team up with your allies to try and conquer the land unchallenged. Some players like to stick to large casual groups and use their massive numbers of players to take objectives, while others try to stick to smaller and highly organized groups and prove themselves while taking down groups far larger than them. One of the greatest things in the open world PvP of The Elder Scrolls Online is that all these playstyles are perfectly enabled and supported. You can choose to be a lone wolf, join an ongoing group who is looking for members, or start one of your own at ease. You can choose how casual or hardcore you want to play and find people who feel the same way to join you. And all these playstyles can live together in the same ecosystem of a gigantic open field PvP zone. But sadly, there's also a big downside to this huge land of PvP, and that is the performance issues of the game. Throughout the years, The Elder Scrolls Online has had multiple states of bad performance in PvP, which affected the players in different ways. Endless load screens that could take dozens of minutes at a time, constant crashes, some of which still exist to this day, but perhaps the worst of all, inconsistent server-side performance. While many times the PvP system of the game can work just fine, there are times where it fails to operate. Massive delays in firing abilities, players' actions not being registered to the server, or being registered at such a huge delay that results in inconsistencies such as players teleporting all around, dead corpses of players still moving around, abilities firing outside of their intended range or ignoring physical objects and traveling through them. Many times, players' health points bars could get desynced, resulting in players dying while seemingly having most of their health points still remaining. And sometimes positional desyncs occur, resulting in abilities not firing since the server and client think the character is located in different places. Perhaps worst of all, players could sometimes become stuck in ability animations or having their abilities disregarded by the server, resulting in a state where the players can't cast skills, attack, heal, or sometimes even move until they die or log out of the game. Such issues have been growing more and more common in the past couple of years, and especially the past few months in The Elder Scrolls Online, and they are certainly very alarming. However, there might be a light at the end of the tunnel. Thus, the developers of ESO have recently acknowledged these very problematic performance issues and have started working hard at attempting to fix them. They spoke openly about the stress that affects their servers from time to time and spent the past couple of months experimenting with solutions to lower the strain on the server by limiting player-based AoEs through many different ways. While their attempt at improving the game's performance has failed, as they admitted in one of their recent forum posts, and while many players, myself included, are very displeased with the way they've been testing extreme measures of limiting players' abilities on the live servers to try and fix those performance issues, it is important to take from this that they are actively working at fixing these issues right now, and will hopefully be able to resolve them soon. In addition, with the Gates of Oblivion teaser trailer that was just released, making a clear connection between the upcoming year of expansions for ESO to the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion, which was set in the land of Cyrodiil itself, this might be the best time for ZOS to be looking into fixing the performance issues of the PvP zone. More on this in my next video. So back to the question we brought up earlier. Should you spend your time and money on the Elder Scrolls Online as a PvP player? Is the game worth it? It could very well be. If you're looking for an immersive, large-scale, open-world PvP game, ESO seems to be the best option that exists right now, with a lot of different PvP-related activities for you and like-minded players. If you're looking for a new PvP game for you and your friends or guild members to start playing together, ESO is a great game for that, as it enables and supports your community and its presence in the PvP zone it provides. If you're looking for a skill-based PvP game which you can master to dominate over other players, ESO is definitely the right fit for you, and while the PvP systems take time to master, they are certainly worth it. However, if stable performance and simple, decisive balance is what you're after, you might want to keep an eye on the game and check where it is headed. The PvP scene in The Elder Scrolls Online has had many ups and downs, but to this very day it remains my personal favorite out of any MMO I have played. I hope the game keeps heading in a good direction and wish to see all of its current problems being resolved in the near future. Until then, while the game remains problematic, it still provides a unique and unparalleled PvP experience that I think any MMO's PvP player should experience and see for themselves. Thank you for watching.